I can't tell you that a particular fruit is going to raise your blood glucose or not. I just don't know. There's so many other factors that affect it differently in your biology versus mine. Number one is, what's the status of my pancreas? Number two is, what's the status of my liver? Three is, did I work out or not? What is my gut microbiome doing? And so all of these different inputs are different into the system from one person to another.
When we have continuous data across more than blood sugar, we're going to be able to map the hysteresis loops of our body. And the word is a little bit complicated, but the point is just simple. The history of a complicated system affects its current moment.
Yeah, and continuous data monitoring will enable that for sure. Josh, welcome to the podcast Extend. It's such an incredible pleasure having you here. A long time coming. I've been using the Levels device that you created it was basically my first CGM that I used. Yeah.
Wow.
My
Very
first
exciting.
continuous glucose monitor. And when it first came out, I was talking to your team members and your app was just being launched. And I was so excited to see this come to fruition. And, I think for my patients, it's been an absolute game changer. So it's an honor to welcome you to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. I could not be more excited to have the conversation. I've been following Next for a long time, and what you're doing with all of your businesses is it's really pushing the industry forward in ways that I couldn't be more grateful for. So thank you, and thanks for hosting me.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible what we're doing, I think, and how the industry is changing, don't you think? Like, I think people are finally taking control of their own health and understanding what their own data means to their health, right? And giving them access to it the way you did with the Levels app that allows you to see what your glucose level is every 5 minutes. Is that correct?
Yeah, roughly 5 minutes, depending on the device you're using.
Yeah.
It's a total paradigm shift. And I think it's still only the first infant step towards where we need to move, which is an abundance environment for health information. When I first tried to get a CGM myself, and this was now almost 10 years ago, I was really disheartened by the interaction I had with this physician. I was able to go down to a pharmacy and grab a finger prick device to measure blood sugar one time, and my fingernails were black and blue from sticking the needles in. And I was just asking, can I get this tool to kind of understand what's going on a little bit better? Something's off. And I was basically shamed out of his office. He was frustrated and upset that I would ask for that device.
Wow. Incredible.
And I think we've seen, if you now fast forward to where we are today, I don't think that pushback exists anymore. And that's really exciting. And yet we have so much more to do.
When was that you went looking for a continuous glucose monitor?
That was in 2016.
2016. So, it's less than 10 years how the perception has totally shifted. For the most part, I still think there's some doctors that, I read this in medical journals that continuous glucose monitors have no data to show that they change the trajectory of anyone's health outcomes. I'm like, so we're going to wait till people die to find out if this thing works or not.
Yeah, I really just have to laugh at it. As an engineer, it is such it's a bit of a Luddite sort of philosophy that we have to wait before adopting new technology until there is the most etched in stone evidence available, and deaths are happening every day.
Yeah.
At the expense of this simple information, the people, by the way, that defines the health of the individual. So going back to that first interaction asking for a CGM, the doctor's position was that I had to be severely sick, not just diabetic, but uncontrolled diabetic to have this tool. And as an engineer, what we were doing every single day was using data to measure the health state of our machines that we were building so that we knew as soon as we subtly shifted off of that healthy trajectory. And that's what I wanted for myself. And when my doctor said, no, you can't have that information, I responded, this is my body. Why am I even asking you? Shouldn't you be asking me for this information? And that sort of triggered this thought, like, imagine going to a financial advisor and my financial advisor says, you don't need access to your bank account information. Let me handle that.
Mind-blowing, right?
I fire that person immediately.
Exactly.
And so, where have we gone wrong that we even have this philosophy that anyone other than ourselves should own and control our health data and use it to our advantage, which includes, by the way, working with experts we trust to take that information and help us make the most of it. But that's the direction we're going in, and Levels exists to break down the barriers to this technology, not just CGMs, but all of the technology we need to measure and understand health state. And eventually, we'll be able to take that and really see some amazing human flourishing as a result.
Absolutely. Josh, what made you go into the doctors office to, seek out a continuous glucose monitor? Were you not feeling well? What was going on?
Yeah, it's a good question. So at the time I was working at SpaceX. It was a really, really intense environment. I'd been there for over 5 years at this point, and I was leading a team. We were developing life support systems for astronauts. And so the goal was to keep people alive in space. SpaceX had never done this before. It was incredibly I felt very honored by the challenge, and also it was incredibly difficult, emotionally and stressful. And I was experiencing a lot of symptoms, physical symptoms. And in retrospect, these things were all connected, but I had no idea what was going on under the hood. Every day, I would have these strange episodes of like frailty. It's hard to describe.
Yeah.
Such low energy that I had to take a seat. I was like kind of cold sweat and shaky. I'd have this pit in my stomach. And, it's 11:30 a.m. What's going on? I was 26 years old at the time. And so, I was just very confused. And I actually would tell my mom, I think I might have a terminal illness. And she would say, you really need to go get checked. Like, go figure out what's going on. So I got all the blood work. My doctor basically said, your vitamin D is a little bit low. Maybe take a supplement and you're super healthy. And it just was not a satisfying answer, because there was every day my experience of my life was very affected by this. And even though I was relatively fit looking on the outside, I worked out really hard. I was a CrossFit trainer at the time as well. These episodes of low energy and fatigue and shakiness and flushing, skin flushing and rapid heart rate were so pronounced that eventually I just started to take things in my own hands and say, I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to figure out how to measure my body in a way that is satisfying.
And there you ended up at the doctor's office, and he was like, no, you can't have this data.
That's right.
But back then, continuous glucose monitors were being used for like type 1 diabetics for the most part. When did they start getting used for type 2 diabetics? Was like, I know levels was the forefront, but was there any history behind that?
Well, the devices have matured somewhat rapidly. It could have moved more quickly if we had more of a kind of private industry free market.
Yeah.
Right now, the healthcare system really breaks the incentives.
Right.
So the technology would be far ahead of where it is today if we made it more accessible. But yeah, they certainly started with the intention of just helping people with type 1 diabetes who have an immediate concern around their blood sugar, right? They have to manage it or it's life or death, to give them that real-time data. And the type 2 use case kind of came about through the Freestyle Libre device first. Dexcom was kind of one of the first to bring about a type 1 device, and then Dexcom kind of led that space, and then Abbott came in with the second technology, which was the Freestyle Libre, and they got an indication for use for type 2 diabetes. And that's kind of where things were around the time that I wanted to get a CGM. I had heard about the Freestyle Libre getting approved. It was really funny. It didn't even connect to your phone at the time. Again, this is 2016.
Right.
Bluetooth existed, but we you had to use this like little pager device that you carried around.
That.
Right?
I had that.
You couldn't zoom in. You couldn't scan. It was just like a trace, like from the Apollo era or something. And still, it was the most incredible technology I'd ever interacted with. It told me immediately what was happening to my body as I took an action. I saw the reaction. So the type 2 was sort of the 2016, 2017 timeframe. And since then, it's really been an uphill battle to convince the industries, both the hardware and the medical industry, that we should not be approaching access to technology based on a disease diagnosis, right? It's unreasonable for every human being that's walking around. Blood sugar is flowing through your veins. Management of it is fundamental to human life. We should not be sort of gating access based on disease. Certainly we should prioritize people who have an immediate condition like type 1 diabetes. And every diabetic person should have a CGM. I think it should be borderline mandatory, right?
Exactly.
But it's unreasonable to say that you cannot understand your health state if you do not have a diagnosed disease. And in fact, I would argue it's totally backwards.
I completely agree with you. I mean, like, why do we wait till someone gets into a disease state, a diagnosed disease state, to then finally start using technology to reverse the disease? Not even reverse, manage the disease state. We wait decades too long sometimes. And so it's mind-blowing to me. And obviously you and I are on the same page here. That's why we created Next Health, is to, number one, monitor people so you never get there in the first place. But if you are in a chronic disease state of it, type 2 diabetes is one of those, knowing that you can reverse that using tools like this, right?
Absolutely.
You probably use the finger stick devices as well to measure your glucose,
did.
and yeah, those are painful and hard to use long term. I used them when I was on the keto diet, also to monitor my ketone levels. And then when the continuous glucose monitor came out with the little filament that goes in your arm and feeds now directly to your phone without even the little interface, you can see your glucose every 5 minutes. Do you see this technology being also useful for ketones, other measurements that we can use?
100%.
Yeah.
This is the future direction, and the potential for the technology is so profound. It's frustrating that we aren't there yet because the technology exists to make this a reality, to be able to measure human physiology in its completeness. Today constantly.
Right.
Today, and basically measurement is the wrong term. It should shift to monitoring, right? Which is a passive observation. Today we are measuring this tiny little slice of physiology, which is blood sugar, and we did that because there's an acute disorder, diabetes. That's why we ended up there, and that's backwards. And again, so this is going back to the engineering principles. What I think we have to do is we have to merge the practice of medicine with the practice of engineering. And they have different philosophies and each can learn from the other. But the future of health will be that merger. In engineering, we measure our complicated machines in the healthy state deliberately. In healthcare, we measure and look for disease state. We wait until there's a symptom. You have to have a diagnostic code. You have to have some symptom to complain about, and then we go and search forensically what could be wrong yet already. And if you don't find anything, they say go away. You don't need any more measurements. We have to flip that paradigm, and to measure in the health state, it is known as health state monitoring. We do this for all of our complex machines. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
An Airbus A350, which is a newer airplane, is collecting 2.5 terabytes of information per flight day.
Incredible.
It's 1,000 megabytes. And that is there are tens of thousands of sensors on every surface of that airplane. And just inside the engines themselves, the parameters of the jet engine are being observed continuously at the millisecond scale on the order of thousands of sensors. Now, does that induce anxiety, all that measurement? Of course not. If you're a pilot with 250 passengers, you're flying across the Atlantic Ocean in a twin-engine airplane, you are not pushed into anxiety by the fact that those engines are being observed in real time. In fact, it's peace of mind because as soon as something goes wrong, you're going to be told about it. You're going to be able to take action, preventive action. That's the direction we have to shift, and it's not a subtle distinction. To look for just glucose because there's a disease associated with it is backwards. To look at the healthy state and observe the full spectrum and identify anything that starts to drift in a direction of disorder is a fundamentally rethinking why we measure in the first place. One other example, which is kind of mind-blowing, the modern car collects about 25 gigabytes of data per hour. The average person will get 80 megabytes of healthcare data in their lifetime.
Wow.
So the car is collecting 4 times more data per hour than you will get in your entire life from the traditional healthcare system.
Oh my gosh.
And that's just totally broken, totally backwards.
Completely broken and backwards, right? And to your point, the technology is there. We're just not even developing it because of our healthcare system and the incentives that the way they are. I think, let's be honest, the reason the continuous glucose monitor was developed was because there was a diabetes type 2 ICD-9 code that you can now bill for, and you can have insurance pay for that CGM, right? And then once they did that and they started getting payment, there was no other diagnostic codes to go after. So let's just stop developing this device. No more R&D dollars went towards this. But I think you and I both know, like, this filament technology can be utilized in, like you said, many other data points. And we need to shift our mindset. We got to get away from this. If it's paid for by insurance, we will do it. Otherwise, it just stops there.
Totally.
Right?
I 100% agree. And, when you have a product that you are paying money for, and in exchange you get some value, that's a very direct system, and the incentives align really nicely. So you want to build a technology that people find a lot of value in, and they're going to be willing to pay a commensurate amount for it. We don't have that in healthcare, right?
No.
It's trying to get that CGM. I was willing to open my wallet and pay whatever it costs to get a CGM, but I was prevented from it. And there's this 3-party system where payment isn't transacted by the person who produces it. It's Totally backwards.
Totally backwards.
So this is why what you're doing and what Levels is doing is so important, is because we're building true transactional relationships with our customers. And our goal is to align incentives and help achieve the best version of health for that person. And to do so, we have to build really valuable technologies that help people to understand and improve health. And there's a world in the very near future where we're able to better understand human biology than understand it at least on the same scale as we understand the internal combustion engine, right?
Amazing. Yeah.
Right now we measure all of our machines continuously because it's that continuous nature of the measurement that matters. It's how it's responding to the load conditions that it's being exposed to, how that machine is responding to real environments around it. That's what you're looking for. You're not looking for a point-in-time measurement. Did the engine run properly on the tarmac before takeoff? Nobody cares about that.
Yeah.
You care about it when it's over the Atlantic Ocean, in Arctic conditions with a hurricane-force wind coming at it and 200 people on board. That's when you care about it. And with the human body, it's the most complex machine. We measure fasting glucose, right? The basal rested, most preserved state. And we do that for some reason because we kind of think that it's maybe the most consistent measurement. I'm least interested in the most consistent measurement. I want to know what's the most out of bounds measurement. When I'm poorly slept, when my blood pressure's out of control, when I've eaten a piece of birthday cake, and my blood pressure's high and my heart rate is up and alcohol's in my system, and I suddenly have to sprint after my baby who's run into the street. Am I going to be able to respond to that circumstance? Do I have the resilience? Is my body going to be able to function? I need to know that before that moment happens. Otherwise, I may not be able to achieve what I need to in the moment. And so the point is that the continuous dynamics of measurement, right? It's that continuous nature that we do not have in our healthcare system today has to become the expectation for everyone. Yeah. I need to know how my body is performing in all conditions, not in the best case scenario during a fasted glucose check.
Exactly. And fasting blood glucose, for the listeners, that's something that you measure with a blood test. And how often do people get blood tests? Not often enough. Even if you get a yearly exam from your doctor, many times they won't even look at the fasting blood glucose on there. If you've even, and a lot of times they don't even tell you to go fasted. You just go and do the blood test and like, oh, you didn't fast. It's fine. It's probably high because you ate something. And then you never get the benefit of understanding what your glucose is doing until it's way too late, until your fasting blood glucose is like 300 and now all of a sudden you're diabetic and an alarm goes off, right? And that's the system that we've lived in since the 80s, and it's time to make a change. And to your analogy, I love your analogy of the airplane, right? We measure terabytes of data for every flight, and the monitors in front of us, in front of the pilot, let them know way before something is going to go wrong. That's why the aviation industry is at such a high standard right now, where planes very rarely crash, and people feel very comfortable getting on an airplane. And if we thought of our health that way, right? Like every person should think of their health as a dashboard, and they need to understand what are the different dials and what do they mean and when things are going in the wrong direction. And we should be empowered not just with the data, but also given the knowledge and be trained in our biology to understand what that dashboard is telling us, right? And so my dream is to teach this in high school to every kid in high school, right? Here's what your continuous glucose monitor means. Here's what your heart rate means. Here's what your HRV means. Like, these are all data points that are available to us. And to your point again is we're just scratching the surface because, it's so frustrating. Like you said, like we have the technology, we've had it for decades now. Why have we not built this out?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. There was this concept in Star Trek of this device called a tricorder.
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. And maybe the nerd in me is coming out, but this device there was like an X Prize challenge around building a tricorder about 15 years ago. And it seemed to me at the time, like, surely this technology already exists. All it does is it just measures, it observes the health state of this, person and just identifies any problems, right? That sounds like something that our technology industry would be able to build.
Great, yeah.
And it turns out, like, we don't even have the motivation to build that at the moment. Right. And it's because we completely miss the purpose. It's not that, every single measurement of that 2.5 terabytes that aircraft is producing is some profound insight. It's exactly the opposite. It's totally boring. It's passive. Nothing's happening. that in and of itself is important. As soon as you see a blip from that passive baseline, something's going wrong or something's trending towards going wrong. That's where the interesting stuff happens. And you want 99.999% of it to be totally uninteresting. That means that's health, that's resilience.
Good. That's health, right?
And that is what we're missing in healthcare is we are forensic pathologists.
Right.
We're looking for what's broken. We need to be looking at what's healthy so that we can know when something starts to break and exactly the cause and effect of it. This concept is super well understood, again, in engineering and the sciences. It's called observability. If you have a complicated system and you can measure enough of the outputs of the system, right? You can measure enough of the parameters that you know its state, then like you can actually model it, right? And then you can identify cause and effect. So an input changes and suddenly the outputs change. Now the state is different. That if you can model that, you have what's known as observability. And this is a little bit like maybe it's a little bit in the weeds, but it's a really important concept because when you have cause and effect, you have control. Now you can modulate the inputs to affect a certain output. And when we think about health, I mean, it's so interesting. We have blue zones where we go and we interview people like you won the lottery, you lived to 100 years. Tell us how you did it. What combination of, you had one whiskey a night, you had a cigar on your 21st birthday. Are these things what cause you live to 100? We're sort of looking at people like in this almost superstitious way.
Right.
Well, that's because we don't have observability.
Right.
We don't know how they got there, and any conclusions we draw are wrong, entirely wrong. And so once we get to the point where we are understanding, we have to be able to observe this complicated system, sufficiently high resolution that we can model it. It's not easy, but we'll get there. Then and only then can we take the targeted actions to control our health at the individual level. And this is why I have such a controversial take. But right now, 9 of the 10 leading causes of death in the United States are directly chronic illnesses or caused by them.
Exactly.
And yet, I do not believe that doctors should be treating or preventing chronic illness.
I agree.
Right? I firmly believe this.
I
That
see
is
this
the
on my
individual's
podcast all
job.
the time.
Great.
The Western medical system was never built to deal with chronic disease.
100%.
It's built for disasters. It's built for if you get hit by a bus, if you get diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and need surgery and chemotherapy. That's what it's built for, heart attacks, right? But everything leading up to that, that's not what the system was built for in the first place, right? So, sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to emphasize, people listen to this podcast, they hear me say the same things over and over again. It's great to hear someone else say it in a different way.
I feel it so strongly, and I know that I know you align with this, and it's like we need to put our foot down, and I think doctors need to. Right now I feel for the system. I feel for these people who want to help, but they're totally ill-equipped. Yeah. They don't have the technology to really understand somebody's chronic illness or why it's developing. But even more importantly, they can't affect the change anyway. It's us. So we make these subtle decisions on a daily basis. Those decisions compound on each other.
Yeah, the inputs.
Exactly. Those are the inputs. It's what we're eating, our exposure to sunlight, our environment, the toxins, our sleep quality, our exercise. All of this stuff, these are small in a vacuum, but they compound on each other. So each one affects the next. And on and on and on. And over years and decades, this manifests as chronic illness and lifespan. Right. And it's not the physician who has the ability to change these inputs. It's me. I have to be able to connect the dots between a cause and an effect, an action and reaction. That's the beautiful thing about a continuous glucose monitor is that you eat something, within 10 minutes, you can see how your blood sugar is changing. You can take action. You can take a walk. You can do some squats, or you just see, oh, wow, that's actually going much better than I thought. Like there is no blood sugar elevation. Interesting. Maybe it's because I'm sensitized. My muscles are sensitized because I just worked out. You learn things immediately, and the behavior change, again, compounds on itself into a different outcome. That is the paradigm we have to replicate to alleviate the system. Physicians should no longer have to worry about chronic illness because we have completely alleviated it. We've shifted it through technology so the individual can understand their health state, the cause and effect, not just blood sugar, across hormones, inflammatory environment, blood sugar, lactate, fats, proteins, understand our bodies, the cause and effect, so that we can control them and we can alleviate the system to do what it does incredibly well, which is to affect traumatic, contagious disease, the types of things that the medical system originally was developed for before this chronic illness epidemic.
Yeah. The combination of those two, a Western medical system that deals with disasters, and then the other, I think that should be 5% of the system. The other 95% is basically individuals taking control of their own biology and having the tools to do so will completely break this trend towards more and more chronic disease, in my opinion. I think we have the power within a generation to completely reverse this. And it only happens with tools like the continuous glucose monitor as one of those tools that everyone makes a part of their life, right? And then understanding that there's other tools. And then, Jason Huang, I think his last name is, the founder of NVIDIA. I just told you the story. He was just asked a few months ago in Berkeley when he did an interview or on-stage interview presentation for the students at Berkeley. One of the students asked him, what is the most exciting thing that you are looking forward to with this technological revolution that you're building at NVIDIA? And he said, you can look up the YouTube video. He said, without a shade of a doubt, the one thing he's most excited about is finally biology is going to become an engineering problem. And when biology, and both of us get chills when we hear this, right? I mean, you got to watch this video. It'll give you chills. But the smartest man in the world telling us we're almost there where biology becomes an engineering problem. And then everything that you said becomes true. You can control the inputs. You can reliably predict the outputs. You can make minute by minute, second by second changes in your behaviors and your habits. And you can completely reverse and avoid chronic disease. Then 9 of the top 10 causes of death go away. Guess what? The other 10th one is probably going to go away too, using artificial intelligence driving our vehicles, right?
Totally.
And we get to a point where people just finally die of an old age with their health, right?
It really is a vision of the future that I'm excited by. It's aspirational thinking around health. And what Jensen's getting at there is something that every single day I wake up excited for, which is that we are finally at the point with our technology that we can crack biology. I mean, it's the most complicated and mysterious of all of the you call it systems or concepts. Like biology it's physics and chemistry. It's so complex. It is us. It's our experience. And we, it doesn't necessarily mean that we'll understand consciousness or some of the metaphysical elements, but understanding how the human body is functioning, that is a solvable problem. And what Jensen's getting at is turning that into an engineering problem. It's exactly what I was trying to say with the merger of medicine, the practice of medicine, and the practice of engineering. We have to be able to measure and then intervene and be able to construct health from the raw inputs. And I'm so excited by not just the technologies we've had, like since the iPhone, right? There's been this amazing revolution in microelectronics and small batteries and like the stuff that you need to make sensors. Yeah. So now we have that. And then with this AI revolution, it's like, I was telling you, it feels like it's meant to be. Suddenly we have the ability to generate so much data that, it can be complicated. Like how do we possibly use this in an efficient way? And then all of a sudden AI breaks through. And now you have this like amazingly simple interface to complexity. Right. And you can sort of talk to your own biological information. Like whoever thought that would be possible? I mean, even in the wildest science fiction, I don't think we imagined that what we're seeing right now with the AI revolution would be possible, especially on the timescale. Yeah. So, this is why I'm so excited that, with a simple interstitial filament, a little filament like a CGM, like what I'm wearing below the skin, there are thousands and thousands of molecules circulating in that interstitial space. All of those molecules is in and of itself an input. It's a measurement, right? Some are more valuable than others. But the fascinating thing is as you measure more than just one molecule, so let's say you measured 2 molecules. Well, you actually get a third. So let's say we're measuring glucose and insulin. So those are 2 fascinating, really important molecules. Insulin is the hormone that helps glucose come into the cells for energy. But you're getting a third marker, which is the glucose-insulin index. It's how they move relative to each other. Yeah. And that means, because for every 2 measurements you get a third, that means there's an exponential value here. The formula grows massively with few increases in the inputs. And so the information unlock with just a few additional markers being measurable is exponential. It's incredible. And that's what AI is built for.
I never thought of it that way. That is so true. AI is built to manage that data and the interactions between different data points. So, and then that's just 2. Then you throw a third one in there, it accelerates even more rapidly because now you have the interactions between those interactions as well, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So the complexity and the value, it makes me smile because it's like the complexity. It's just a few. This goes to your point. You always raise the 20-80 paradigm, right? That 20% of the information gives you 80% of the value. 100% agree. Mm-hmm. And this is that example. Maybe 20% of the markers that are circulating are going to give us the vast majority of information about our health, and AI will help us target those. And so, in the example of glucose and insulin, insulin's a hard molecule to measure. But if you have that glucose-insulin index, you suddenly can understand your insulin sensitivity. and your insulin resistance. And there's this fascinating concept that we do not at all use in medicine. I've read maybe 3 papers that mention it in scientific journals, and they're typically from PhDs who are not necessarily they're like in biological research. We don't use it in medicine at all, but it's so fundamental. So our bodies are these kind of wet chemistry sets, right? We're introducing chemicals through our food and through our environment, our sunlight into our bodies, and then new chemicals are being synthesized all the time, and they're breaking those things down and turning them into energy, et cetera. It's a chemistry problem. Very complicated. There's a concept called hysteresis, and I'm going to try not to make it complicated. It's very simple. It just means that systems are the state of a system is affected not just by the current moment, but by its history. That's what it boils down to. Think about a thermostat.
Right.
So in your house, let's say your thermostat is set to 70 degrees. Well, if the temperature in your house increases to 71 degrees, the thermostat typically doesn't turn on, right? It's only once it reaches, say, 72, then it turns on, and it doesn't turn off the instant it hits 70. It actually will cool to about 68, and then it will turn off. And then it will start to rise back, and it'll hit 70, but it won't turn on, even though the setting is at 70.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, at any moment, if your house is 70 degrees, do you know if your thermostat is on or off?
Right. You don't know.
You don't know.
No.
Because it depends on whether the temperature is increasing or decreasing.
Yes.
Think of this like insulin and blood sugar. If your blood sugar is rising rapidly and it hits 100 milligrams per deciliter, your body is producing a lot of insulin to address that glucose. But what if it's crashing, right? It's coming down from 200 to 100. Now your body's not producing insulin. It's actually trying to figure out how to prevent it from going even lower. Maybe it's producing glucagon or something else. So at 100 milligrams per deciliter, your body, you cannot tell, if you just have a single data point, whether your body is producing insulin or not, how it's responding to that. Right. That's hysteresis. It means that you have to know the history of the system to know what any one measurement means. And when we have continuous data across more than blood sugar, we're going to be able to map the hysteresis loops of our body. And again, the word is a little bit complicated, but the point is just simple. The history of a complicated system affects its current moment.
Yeah.
We can't do that in medicine. It has to change.
Yeah, and continuous data monitoring will enable that for sure. There's one difference to kind of highlight in this analogy that we have is that each one of our individual bodies are an N of one, right? Like we're not talking about an assembly line of airplanes here. We're talking about your biology being different than my biology, being different than another person on the street's biology, obviously, right? And so we have to develop these systems for each individual. And I think that's also something to highlight because AI will also be able to do that on an N of one basis for us, right? So the continuous glucose monitor is a perfect example of this. This is why I really encourage all of our patients to wear it because I can't tell you that a particular fruit is going to raise your blood glucose or not. I just don't know. There's so many other factors that affect it differently in your biology versus mine. Number one is what's the status of my pancreas, right? Number two is what's the status of my liver? Three is did I work out or not? What is my gut microbiome doing? And so all of these different inputs are different into the system from one person to another. And so it's, I think, more complicated than your typical engineering problem with machines, but also it's not something that can't be overcome.
Of course, yeah. Absolutely. What's always been a little bit frustrating is when you look at the state of current, epidemiology or nutritional science or even more targeted trials like randomized controlled trials, we sort of average out all of the variation, right? And so it's the N of many, but few data points paradigm. We measure lots of people a few times,
right?
And so you'll look at these plots of the effect size, right? For let's say, for anything, right? A certain food or a certain exercise routine or a certain medication even. And you'll see that there's this distribution, right? It's like a bell curve.
Bell-shaped curve, yeah.
And there are data points all the way across the bell curve. Most of the people are kind of in the middle, but then there's people on this side and there's people on that side. And those are real people.
Yeah.
This person had a totally different response than that person.
Exactly.
If I'm this person, I want to know, am I this person or am I that person?
Yeah.
And so we deliberately average that out and we say, oh, it doesn't work or it does work. But actually, we know that it works for some people and it doesn't work for others. This has always, always, always been in the data.
Yeah.
And we try to completely suppress it. And a lot of scientists don't like this when you cherry pick, they call it. But if it's real, right? If it's me on that bell curve on the left side versus the right side, that's not cherry picking for me.
Yeah.
It's cherry picking for the conclusion for the population. Fine. But that's not what I care about. The future is going to be N of 1 with many data points. So not N of many, few data points, N of 1 with many data points. You will be doing randomized controlled trials on yourself. The equivalent, the gold standard will be introduce a change, measure the impact with very high resolution on your health, introduce a different change, observe the effect, and we will be able to do real high quality science. In fact, I think we're going to look back and kind of laugh at the old school paradigm we were in, where we had to measure other people that were nothing like us to try to predict what we should do. I think there's a really funny analogy here as well. Again, to kind of make it machines again, I love it. I do this, but imagine your car, for those of us that don't drive EVs, imagine your car didn't have an oil pressure gauge. And when you were trying to figure out when to check or measure your oil, you had to consult a journal where some researchers went and they sampled randomly cars in a different part of the world and measured the oil quality, and then they published that in the journal. And you got to pay money to see the journal and then figure out, okay, based on these diesel trucks, in Nebraska, should I change the oil in my Honda Civic in New York? It'd be absurd. But that's what we do with medicine. We're like sampling randomly people who aren't us and trying to predict, how does this affect me? How should my choices change? What should I eat for lunch?
Exactly. It's mind-blowing, yeah. But, that's all we had for many years, and that's what created this incredible system that we have. But it is time for a change. And, I don't think this is in the future like 100 years. This is now. People can do this currently with the technology right now. And so if you're not doing this now and you're going to wait because maybe you have data overwhelm, I hear this a lot. Like, I don't want to know the data. It stresses me out. Or maybe you think that, the doctor telling you that you don't need that unless you're type 2 diabetic. You're going to miss out on just, first of all, the health benefits you can have now, but also getting into the mindset as things advance, right? Because as things advance, if you don't know how to use like an iPhone 5, using a new iPhone, like an iPhone 17, is very difficult, right? There's so many more options, so much more you can do with it. Yeah. So I think it's important to start now with this mindset. Do you agree with that?
100%. There's this concept of like data native or like internet native,
yes,
right? It basically just means that you've kind of like grown up with the ecosystem and you understand it. And there's absolutely a disparity between people who can use computers and can't today in our modern world where everything is powered by these things. And there's going to be a similarity with our healthcare system, or the future like healthcare 3.0 system, where it's powered by this continuous accessible data. And people who have gotten an early jump on this, who wear wearables, they measure their heart rate, they measure their HRV, they measure their blood sugar, they have an incredible advantage already, right? I mean, you see this. One of the things that's manifesting is kind of this like reduction in alcohol.
Right.
And I'm one of those people. I wore a Garmin watch and saw how just kind of crushed my heart rate would be. It would be like 20% higher overnight, and I would wake up poorly recovered. And it was just so stark. And just take the alcohol away, even just a glass of wine at dinner was doing this to me. And these things compound again, like over a long time period. The inflammation, the quality of my rest, and the recovery, how I can sort of heal from infections, that sort of thing is being affected by those poor sleeps. And so that's just a simple example, but that kind of like ecosystem familiarity is going to be really important. Now, tools again like AI is going to make this so much more accessible. And it sounds, to kind of address the point around the overwhelm and the anxiety. Like, firstly, in the world that we're talking about, this is not combing through reams and reams of spiderweb data. Right. Exactly. This is a simple interface. Most likely, it's actually just passive. It's probably just an AI assistant saying, you should pick this item on the menu, not that one. And that's like already interpreting your cortisol state, your blood sugar, your lipids history, your family history. All that stuff is packaged into that one recommendation. It's like, oh, easy, you know? But more importantly, I think that the anxiety point, the reason we're in this world where a healthcare measurement feels like a scary thing is because we've been in a scarcity environment for so long.
I agree.
Let's take the imaging example. So MRI is this incredible technology, right? Magnetic resonance imaging. It uses magnetic fields to be able to measure all the soft tissues and like create a map of the human body. Really profound. There's no radiation involved. And so you can do it without like X-ray exposure and such. I personally believe that every person should be getting a full body MRI every year, and it should cost like $50.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, today, it's about a 6-month wait list. You have to have a soft tissue damage in order to even like kind of get a recommendation for an MRI. And it costs on the order of like $2,500 on average. So in a world where an MRI is expensive, it's artificially scarce, and you have one image, you have to take action on any result that you get. So there's this fear. What's going to be in the image? Like I'm terrified of that measurement, because what if it should show something that's off or that's scary? You know, a surgeon might have to cut me open and try to like extract it or something. Well, that's only in the world where MRIs are scarce. In a world where everyone has an MRI on a continuous basis and they're affordable and accessible, you can just take another scan, right? Just see, is it still there? Is the artifact still there? Maybe wait 3 months. Has that abnormality changed, developed in some way? If so, then you can take action. So we only have this scary world when data is scarce and when we have to take an action based on it, which could be a bad action. In a world where it's abundant and you have it continuously, you become familiar with the trends and patterns, and you can take action only in targeted ways when you're really well informed. And it's frankly a travesty. There's a lot of unfortunate situations where physicians are exposed to unnecessary risk because people are trying to take action on too few measurements.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You know, we're doing a lot of analogies here, so I love this. But the way I like to think of that data overwhelm problem, and I talk to my patients about it. I'm very empathetic towards them. You know, I understand, right? Because you feel disempowered because no one's ever given you the data before. And then you also don't really know what to do with it either once you have it. And so I think education preceding the data is really important, because then you feel more empowered to make actions. So I'll use sleep as an example. A lot of times I'm convincing my patients to get like an Oura ring or some sort of sleep tracking device, like a Whoop band or whatever have you. And a lot of times people are like, I just don't want to know because I don't know what I'm going to do about it. So then I educate them, like, here are the things you can do in your sleep environment. Here are the things you can do in your sleep routine. Here are some of the other, nutrients that you can take to help you sleep better. And then once you have that knowledge, then the data can be affected by your knowledge, right? And so I think if you approach it in that way, it can be really powerful. And I also tell them, like, look, obviously when you learn to drive a car, if you go back to, high school when you were taking driving lessons, you had a lot of anxiety because you were going to get all this data for the first time into your brain, right? But what happens after even just a few months of driving that car? It's like you can do it, without even thinking about it. People end up from home at work without even thinking about it, right? And so for me, tracking my own data is now I don't even think about it. It just happens in the background, and my brain has developed habit loops around what to do and how to look at it, et cetera, and it just works.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's it's really common. There's maybe like an initial learning curve, and then you kind of get familiar with it, and some of the you sort of explored the boundary box, and you've had those bad nights of sleep. You've also had great nights of sleep, and you can start to connect those dots. But what we found at Levels is that over the past, we've kind of had 3 phases of Levels. Phase 1 was just break down barriers, get the technology out, get it to people. Phase 2 was start to develop insights, help people create some actionability, identify these causes and effects where we could. Phase 3 is really a maturity. It's kind of to your point, having that information and being informed or educated. Right now, we're incorporating coaching and additional information in the form of blood work alongside CGM. We've been doing blood work since 2020, but it's giving a more comprehensive view, and it's coaching people in the progression from measurement to improvement to measurement again. And that has really been a breakthrough for people. We've recently seen that for people that are going through this blood work plus CGM plus our coaching, they're on average 80% are improving out of range biomarkers. And they're doing it this is all lifestyle first, right? We're not doing medications for this. And so it's entirely just recognizing that you are fully empowered. You have this information, we're telling you how to connect action to reaction, what's driving it. And then you just go do it and then measure again. And you see, wow, that worked. It's not out of my control. And that's where the magic moment happens, where it's none of this stuff is woo-woo. It's oh yeah, my food affects my health, my sleep affects my health, exercise affects it. This is it's in my control.
Yeah. And there's another powerful aspect to having the data as well, is that it's incredibly motivating to see the change actually happen, right?
Totally.
And so when I started wearing the continuous glucose monitor, my hemoglobin A1C was like 5.6. I didn't like where I was at. I wanted it to be better. Obviously, it wasn't in any sort of diabetic range, but I don't want to wait that long, right? So using the CGM, I was able to get it down to 5.4 and then 5.3, and now I'm aiming for 5.2. And it's that continuous feedback of the data that's so motivating. It's almost like gamifying it to myself, how I can make that better and better and better. Can I ask you about the blood testing? I know you guys have been doing it for a while. I would love to hear any insights that you've gathered from now 5 years of doing blood tests and tying it in with the CGM data.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Again, right now, I think blood work is a necessary bridge technology to where we're going, which is going to be continuous measurement, right? And so it's a little bit unfortunate because you only have a few data points, but you can do a lot with them, right? And A1C is a really good example. It's showing you kind of the culmination of your blood sugar over time. The things that we are able to do is supplement beyond just blood sugar. We're able to look at your lipids, right? Your apolipoprotein B, your LP little a, your triglycerides. We're able to look at your protein metabolism, your kidney health. We're able to look at liver health. All of that stuff supports an understanding of what the CGM is telling us. And so I think the most fascinating thing is, so a personal example. I recently ran through our heart health program at Levels, which takes blood work and CGM data. It sets program goals around protein, net carbohydrates, and fiber. And in 5 weeks, from start to finish, my ApoB came down from 98 to 73, and with no medication. And this was just following fiber. I targeted 40 grams of fiber a day. I targeted 1 gram per pound of protein per day. And I targeted net carbohydrates at 40% of my intake. And what I saw was I didn't just see apolipoprotein B improve. My blood sugar improved. So I've always had, since using a CGM, my sort of resting glucose has been elevated, my fasting glucose, and I have sort of impaired glucose tolerance. Blood sugar goes super high for carbohydrates. So that improved. My triglycerides came crashing down into the 40s, and my ApoB came down. And what's amazing is the leverage that we have on these markers. ApoB being a prime example, or LDL, cholesterol is kind of what most people probably have measured. We're kind of told that these things don't change, not quickly, that's for sure. And sort of any rapid change is probably going to require medication, especially to get down into the regions that I'm in. Well, it turns out that when you use a closed loop feedback like a CGM, that immediately informs the quality of my nutrition decisions. That's keeping me on the daily accountability path. I'm like closing the loop through that CGM feedback. And then the longer feedback loops being blood work, you're able to like stay focused and then lock in the measurement with these North Star metrics. And it's just incredibly, I feel like I can change any marker on my blood panel through lifestyle only with CGM as a partner in it. Wow. And a lot of it, it's not just me. Again, like I said, 80% of people who start with elevated fasting insulin, right, over 18, 80% of them improve it by more than 30 points just in a few weeks using Levels. Triglycerides, another one. A1C, another one. People just improve just through observation with their CGM data. It's a profound, like it's a manifestation of the Hawthorne effect, which it's this effect that was it was from I think there was an electrical plant in Illinois called the Hawthorne Electrical Plant or something, and they basically announced to the employees that they were studying productivity. And they actually never got the study off the ground, really. But productivity went through the roof. And they were like, hold on a second. And so it was actually just the fact that people thought their productivity was being measured caused them to improve their productivity. And so if you know that you're measuring your health, you will pay more attention to it. And that will cause you just through osmosis to improve. And I think that, that is what Levels is building on, is it's the cause and effect relationship with the CGM. And the big picture is measured with blood work. And we're able to build this really beautiful feedback cycle with measurements every quarter for blood work and the CGM keeping you going daily.
I love that. And, to this point of this feedback loop that you're developing, it seems like it should be relatively easy then to also tie in other pieces of data from wearable devices. And so is there a world where you're tying in HRV, resting heart rate, et cetera, and bringing that also into kind of that data mix?
Totally. Right now, we do pull in lifestyle markers from other wearables. So,
okay.
so sleep data, heart rate variability are all brought into the back end for our system. We're finding ways to when anything we expose on the user interface, we want to be like super actionable.
Right.
And so we kind of like abstract it a little bit. We don't necessarily have like a lot of information about HRV. We're using it to understand recovery quality and sleep quality, and that's super important. So poor sleep, which I essentially, if there's one thing I would recommend people do if you're trying to understand sleep, get a heart rate tracker. Doesn't matter what device. I use a Garmin watch.
Yep.
Measure your resting heart rate overnight.
Yeah.
That is beyond anything else, even HRV, that is the best indicator of the quality of my sleep. How low did my heart get overnight? And so we do pull that information in and use it to assess quality, which then affects today. We kind of had this idea maybe, or like I think as individuals, we kind of think like, well, yesterday was different from today, fresh start today. And I wish that were true. Unfortunately, yesterday and all the decisions, again, this hysteresis concept, all the decisions we made yesterday, the quality of our sleep, what we did, what we ate, that actually is going to affect today.
Absolutely.
And we need to know that context. And so Levels really focuses on helping you identify each morning, like here's where you're starting and here's how that should affect today.
Yeah.
And you will only get better at this as we add more and deeper information into the mix.
Yeah, so true. One of the things I noticed with wearing the CGM was how it affected my resting heart rate at night and my sleep was that the closer I ate anything in my mouth, whether it was anything except water to my sleep time, it affected my overnight resting heart rate. And so I kept just turning it back a little bit time-wise to where I would only eat. My dinner now is at 5:30 p.m. and that seems to be the magic time where I get the best sleep at night. And also, using the CGM, that has to be a meal that is started with fiber, has a big dose of protein in it, and some carbs as well, right? And so you find that magic combination for you, tying in all these data points over time as well.
Absolutely. It's you've got better discipline than I do. For a while there, I was able to get my like last meal earlier in the day, but lately it's been drifting. But it's so true. There's this like, digestion and distributing those molecules and then the ATP generation and all that stuff. Like it puts you in a higher energy state, it seems like, to have food processing in your system. And I think Brian Johnson, is like one of the most extreme examples. Like, I'm pretty sure his last meal is at like 11:30 a.m. right now, which is pretty wild. I mean, it's certainly not for everyone, but I think the point is just like, if you look at his sleep streak, I think he had like a year of 100% recovery on Whoop. I mean, that's insane.
Insane.
Even just the error on that device itself should like show some fluctuation, but he's just nailing the recovery so consistently, and that's obviously part of it. And he will say, I've chatted with him a few times, and he'll always say like the last meal has got to be 4 hours before sleep, or you're just you're doing yourself a disservice. And so I think that these are those simple or like subtle optimizations that when you can get a receipt, you do that and then you see the difference between yesterday's sleep quality and today's, and you're like, oh wow, that actually did move the needle on this measurable thing. It's a really strong reinforcement. It's not just like when you read about something on the internet and then you just wonder, well, did it work? Did it matter? You're just very likely going to lose interest in that shortly thereafter. But again, getting that receipt on it helps you commit and like stay focused, and that becomes a behavior change, a habit.
Yeah, absolutely. I love talking to you because you're an engineer and you have this engineering mindset, and you have this like kind of relationship to data that is so innate in your brain. Like, here's how you think about the data. There's nothing magical. There's nothing scary about it. It's just data. And presenting that to people, right? I think it's difficult right now because, number one, people aren't used to living with data the way you are, and people are not used to having any insight into their biology the way physicians have into, going through medical school and being in front of patients and understanding that insight into biology that we have. And so I think, unfortunately, a lot of people are not comfortable with the data and then what to do about it from a physiological standpoint. So, and I'm asking you this question because I fight this battle every day with my patients, and when we first started Next Health, it was 10 years ago, around the same time that you were looking into making the continuous glucose monitor available beyond prescription, right? And it's been a really hard climb to get people used to both of these, right? And so I would just love to hear, how do you talk to people or get their heads wrapped around even just going in this way, right? And so it's kind of like a marketing question. How are you tackling this kind of blue ocean territory, right? Because still, I mean, like probably less than 1% of people wear a continuous glucose monitor, right? There's a massive blue ocean out there. How are you thinking about re-educating people's perception around this?
I think the vast majority of it is approaching from an aspirational lens, that this is empowering. The technology is empowering. And if we become, in any case, if we become at the mercy of our technology, we get subject to it, doom scrolling and social media and all these things, they can have these consequences that are negative. But in all the circumstances where our technology is a tool that we use to our advantage, we've seen massive improvements in productivity, quality of life, human flourishing. And it's super, super important to approach this not from fear-mongering. I think there's a lot of unfortunate messaging around fear and disease, and like, you have to measure this because it's probably sneaking up on you, and if you don't, something bad will happen. And inevitably, I think that just reinforces the stigma around this sort of thing. Yeah. For me, it's exactly the opposite. It's that as early and as consistently as possible, we should be measuring the healthy state so that we can really understand the connection that we have to the healthy behaviors that we are doing every day, and to understand where it's drifting. And so at any point, it's better to start now than to not, to get a feel for how your body's functioning, to start to develop interoception, the ability to like connect the data to how I feel. And the beauty of it is that regardless of where you are on the spectrum of health, right, we all have the same processes running in our bodies. And to identify those is not ever scary. It's just, all it is the current circumstances that already exist, just better defined so that you can understand them. And understanding is always better than not understanding, always. So that aspirational element of like, once you have it, then you can start to improve every day. And every day can be a little bit better than yesterday. And it just flips the paradigm from avoid disease. I mean, it's like saying, avoid bankruptcy is not a retirement plan, right?
Exactly.
Right? Avoid disease. Is that really the best we can do in our healthcare system?
Right.
No, it's achieve your peak.
Right.
Live as the best version of yourself. That's the type of messaging that I want to use, and that's the type of thing that gets people interested in trying it. It's like, this isn't going to bludgeon you with fearful and disciplinary actions, telling you, oh, everything you're doing is wrong. And even if it does say everything you're doing could be improved, that's the framing.
Yeah.
And here's how you can do it. And so it's a little bit, it's different for every person, right? Everybody's got to kind of come around on their own terms. But the more people adopt it, and the less stigma that we put on these technologies and the data that it's generating, the better. And I'm like very happy to say, I'm very willing to say, I've been pre-diabetic according to this continuous glucose data for 6 years, and I struggle to keep myself in a good blood sugar zone. My fasting glucose, I would bet right now, just the mild stress of being on a podcast, for example, my blood sugar is for sure over 115 right now, and I can tell that interoception. Again, my face is a little flushed, my heart rate's a little elevated. I know these things because I've been measuring, and it's not fearful. It's not fear-inducing. I know what I'm going to do about it, and that's a good thing. It's like I have a plan.
Yeah. It's biofeedback, and then you could tell just by how you're feeling what's probably happening to your blood glucose. Right?
Right.
I love that. So I'm so excited about this technology, and we've made, I don't know if you even know this or not, but Levels Health is going to be our continuous glucose monitor partner.
Oh, I know.
Here at Next
Quite
Health.
excited.
Yeah. And we're going to highly encourage all of our members, benefit from this data. What are some of the things that you're excited about in the future, whatever you can tell me, that we can see coming from Levels Health? You're already tying in wearable data. You're tying in blood biomarker data. What other data points potentially could be tied into this? And where do you even see the sensor technology going?
So I can talk about a lot of stuff, but the direction that Levels is going is biological observability, right? So we are forging the path for new technologies to be accessible to people, and that those technologies will always be useful to measure the human health state better. So right now, it's the blood sugar, the continuous glucose data, it's labs. But we're building a really powerful health record that you own, an empowering health record that you can completely control. And I'm very excited about this. It sounds subtle, but actually it's like, it is the ecosystem. You can put all data that you've ever collected for your health into this ecosystem, and it breaks it out into health chapters. And so it kind of gives the progression of you. And right now I'm a new father. My son's 6 months old, and my sleep isn't great, right? One of the consequences of fatherhood. A lot of other things are great.
I remember
Sleep
that time.
yeah. And so I'm in a different era. My body is being affected. My health state is different in this current moment. And when I emerge from that, I'm going to have some different goals to kind of get back on track. And so the health record that I have tells that story back to me. It explains where I am right now, what's driving my current health state. And so Levels is building these tools that people can really own. They can interpret and interact with your data in a completely empowering, easily exported to interact with physicians, other experts sort of way. Where the technology is going, where the measurements are going, is very exciting. The ecosystem is changing rapidly. We've got over-the-counter CGMs now for the first time. So Freestyle Libre has now transitioned to Lingo for the over-the-counter, and Dexcom introduced Stelo. And there is a recent FDA approval for BioLink, which is really the third CGM to get approved in the United States. So the BioLink's new product is called Shine, and it's not over the counter, but it's an entirely new paradigm. It does not have an interstitial filament. It's these sort of microneedle patch. So there's no it's not as deep. Yeah. It's worn on a different part. It's worn on the forearm, and it has some really cool new features. And the platform that BioLink is building on seems extensible. I know there are lots of teams working on the next phase, which is going from glucose, which has a really strong, obviously, diabetes market, but deliberately following Levels, right? And we're saying measurement for wellness cases is in and of itself the largest application for monitoring.
Sure, absolutely.
And there are many teams that are working on this. I can personally say that I know that there are continuous cortisol sensors out there, continuous lactate sensors, continuous ketone sensors. I can't say exactly who's working on all those things, but those all exist right now today. They have incredibly high value and really, really high quality data. And so that gives you kind of like a sense for the next wave. We're going to move from glucose to multi-molecule, and it's going to be really a game changer. And then from there, the kind of like 10 years out, I would argue that we will be able to measure a pretty comprehensive view of hormones, inflammatory state, all the metabolites, proteins, and potentially even toxins, and maybe even like antibodies, viral load. You're going to have a real incredible view of real-time health for yourself. And so I just I'm beaming ear to ear every day. I'm so excited to get to work on this stuff. And the technology, literally, we've only taken the first step.
That's incredible. I mean, just every single thing you said there, to be able to measure cortisol in real time, and to know an alert go off on your phone, your cortisol level has been high for too long, kind of a thing. And let's get out of this, do some breath work.
Totally.
It could be a game changer. Yeah. One of the interviews I had on this podcast was with Dr. Jay Shah, and he, no relation to me, but he's working really hard on a continuous blood pressure monitor that just got FDA approval here in the United States, called Hilo. And
that was Actia before?
Yeah, Actia, right, exactly.
Yeah, I've been tracking. I did not realize they just got approved.
Yeah, yep. And so it'll be distributed here soon. Game changer. I mean, just like glucose, like right now, people measure their blood pressure one time, if they're lucky, a year, right? And if you have a blood pressure cuff at home, maybe you'll do it a couple times a year. Understanding that it's not just that one point in time measurement that matters. It's what's happening throughout the day. What are the situations that raise your blood pressure to unhealthy levels? When do you know in real time? How can you bring your blood pressure down? But also, what is that area under the curve, which is important with glucose measurements too, right? Not only how high is it spiking, but how long is it staying in that state as well? All of those are measurements that we have no idea right now, and those compound over time into poor health. And so, I think even just a combination of continuous glucose monitoring plus continuous blood pressure monitoring, it's a game changer right there for people's health.
Awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. I'm really excited to hear that they got U.S. approval. I mean, I'm somebody who has also struggled with hypertension. I was first told I was an ROTC in college, and at 19, I was told that I was hypertensive and I would not be allowed to fly, or in this case, I wanted to fly helicopters. I decided not to commission because of that.
Wow.
No one ever connected that to my lifestyle. I mean, I was sleeping 2-3 hours a night in certain cases. I had jobs. I was working 21 credits of education stuff. It was just crazy. And of course, my blood pressure was elevated. Now I'm able to like connect those. I have a blood pressure cuff at home. I measure as consistently as possible. But I'm really interested in the way I measure it is the way that you're supposed to, which is like you sit at rest for 10 minutes. Don't have to go to the bathroom. Like make sure you're like totally ready. Then take one measurement. And that's the best case scenario. And it's just like I know that is not my real circumstance. I'm running a business. I'm trying to exercise. I'm drinking a bunch of coffee. What is the actual area under the curve? And so these tools. I mean, again, the revolution that's coming is going to be incredible.
Yeah, and I think luckily, hopefully, everyone listening to this podcast can take advantage of these tools right now. And like you said, start getting some data literacy, right? Start getting used to the data, understanding what affects it. It's so powerful. And you're going to be a major step ahead of most people out there. And the side effect of just avoiding chronic disease, I always say, is you feel great. Like you feel so much better every day, right?
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, exactly. That's the upside.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're not just avoiding disease, like you said, not just avoiding bankruptcy. You're super profitable, right?
Totally.
So
feel better every day.
that's the side effect of knowing what your data is.
Yeah. It's really interesting to imagine a world where we don't just like plan financially for retirement. We know that we're going to be healthy enough to enjoy it, right? Yes. I mean, that's the world we all want. And that means that does mean getting better every day. And that's something I can say. I have such a better quality of life as a result of the micro optimizations. And some things, I still have work to do. But the difference between where I am now and where I was in my 20s when I was having all those inexplicable episodes of just fatigue and just like honestly a cognitive cloud that would hang over me, and I would struggle with memory issues and all this stuff. The difference there is night and day. And I'm so grateful that this technology was available. And there's so many people that still don't know about it. And this is why this podcast is so important, to help people spread the word. Like this technology right now is available today. It can change your life.
Yep, exactly. There's some people that might be new to this world of CGM, and you and I live in it, so we talk about it kind of freely. But I think it's important for people to understand that the way this works. So the CGM device is made by companies like Dexcom, right? And Dexcom and Abbott, right? Abbott and Dexcom. And they make basically a patch that goes into your arm that previously you had to get a prescription to get it. Now there are lower cost, maybe a little bit less accurate over-the-counter versions. Would you say that's true?
Some of the data is still coming in. They're supposed to be the same platforms, but yeah, they operate a little bit differently.
They do operate a little bit differently. Okay, but that's just the hardware part of it. And then you need an app or something to interpret the data that's being fed from that device to your phone by Bluetooth, right? And so that app is the software part of it, and that's where Level Health comes in, is developing software that is easy to digest the data that is coming from this device, that piece of hardware that you put in your arm. And then what you've done with that data that's coming into the Levels app is you're plotting their glucose over time. But more than that, what you're seeing is what are the moments in time that are causing unhealthy levels of blood glucose, right? And you're empowering people with that knowledge. And it could be food, it could be sleep, it could be exercise, and what can you do to make those unhealthy levels of glucose better? Take a walk after a meal, start your meal with fiber, avoid certain foods. All of that is given to you in this app. And then lastly, what's really beautiful about the app is now you can take a picture of your food, and AI will very accurately, actually, I've done this so many times now, tell you the macros in it, what it's going to potentially do to your blood glucose level, all of that. Within seconds, it will tell you that meal, even like a complicated meal, like you mix up a salad, it recognizes what's in there. Yeah. And the portion size is mind-blowing.
Yeah. Well, you did a better job than I would explaining what we do. Yeah, we sit at the node that pulls all the different data in, including from these continuous devices, which, the manufacturers, they do a great job building the hard technology, but then actually translating that into, well, what does it mean? What actions can I take? That's what we hear from members who use EGM is, I just need somebody to tell me what to do. And what Levels does, and increasingly through the application of AI, more now on the front end, always on the back end, interpreting the data and helping to kind of translate the action to the reaction, how a specific decision, meal, exercise, sleep affected your blood sugar curve. We've always been using AI on the back end to just help us interpret and surface really good insights. And now on the front end with the user interface, being able to effortlessly log your food and break that down. And we have some really exciting things coming soon with, again, better application, the ability to sort of talk and interact with the data in a really powerful way, be able to query into your health history, the connections between different data streams, and it's just getting better and better. The sandbox that I get to experience on the on the inside is really, really exciting. And again, with blood work there, every step of the way, we constantly have that kind of North Star metric of health, the stuff that the healthcare system really trusts, and that's given us the ability, and for patients to be able to really understand the connections to these numbers, but also advocate for themselves. When you just have a CGM on and it's showing some traces, a lot of physicians, they don't know what to do with that, right? But when you're able to bring that data along with evidence from your blood work that your A1C improved from 5.7 or 6.5, for a lot of people down to 5.2, that's something that gets physicians' attention. You can really talk to the healthcare system kind of through. So that's why we're building that health record, like the ability to bring all that data into a very concise form that you can interact with a physician with, you can export, you can really take control of your health data, not just for your own actions, but to also work with experts. And so that's what Levels is access, actionability, and empowerment over your health data.
Yeah, and for the practitioners out there, you guys have now also a practitioner dashboard where you can access the data of your patients too,
Absolutely.
Correct? So that makes it really fantastic for our practitioners that, a lot of people, to speak to data overwhelm, when we're trying to get people to start using a continuous glucose monitor as one piece of data, for example, one of the ways that I kind of mentally get their heads around is say, look, don't even look at the data, just wear it for a little while. And when you come back in to see me in about a month, we'll go pull up your dashboard together and I'll tell you what I'm seeing. And that way, I think they're stepping into this new world. They're first getting the data, not even looking at it. Then I'm looking at it with them. Then I'm giving them some tools and not just tools, but also like habits really to affect the data. And then they'll look at it just selectively. And then they just start getting more and more used to this. And so that's kind of, I would say, the trick I use with some patients that are a little resistant to the data.
Sure. Yeah. We intend to facilitate the physician, the expert, practitioner, patient relationship, and make these tools, again, these tools can be overwhelming, not just for the individual, but also for the expert. When you've got, I can only imagine, when you've got reams and reams of data coming in from all these different patients who want that insight, right now it's a little disorganized. And so what we're doing with Levels is helping to organize and make it really simple to access that through our dashboard. And we'll have AI insights as well at the practitioner level. So when your patient shares your data with you, you're able to get the real quick highlights and the takeaways and see that information, be able to work with the patient on improvement. And so I think, again, the future is one where the patient is really in control. They're able to make a lot of the right decisions. Every once in a while, they get tweaks from their practitioner, and you're really able to be that backstop in case something really goes wrong unexpectedly. And I think Levels would be that ecosystem. As the technology matures, we're going to translate that into the world.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So, we have a few more minutes, and I want to just kind of dive into metabolic health with you real quick. And
Great.
So, I think many people are now operating from a state of fear because there's a lot of publicity around this data point that 90% of Americans on average have some level of poor metabolic health, right? And so I have a lot of patients coming to me and they're asking me like, do I have poor metabolic health? And so we go down some of the blood biomarkers of poor metabolic health, like hemoglobin A1C, fasting insulin level. We also have a liver scanner here where we can scan people's liver with ultrasound and see if they have fatty liver disease or fibrosis in their liver. We also obviously put them on a scale that uses bioimpedance to measure their visceral fat and their total body fat. And all of these are different data points for metabolic disease, right? And people can get a lot of these data points for free at home as well. They can measure, for example, their waist to hip ratio. But it's important to understand whether or not you're headed towards diabetes, but also headed or also like in a state right now of metabolic disease. And so I think for the listeners of this podcast, I would love for you to just kind of give a big picture explanation of what metabolic disease is and why do you need to know if you have metabolic disease or not?
Yeah, it's so I try not to just oversimplify, but what I really believe is that we think about physical health and mental health. Both of these sit on a foundation, which is metabolic health. Basically, how your cells take in the environment, nutrients, et cetera, that we provide and turn it into energy. That's metabolism. And if your cells, so every cell in the body needs to have energy production available to it. And if the cells in certain compartments of the body, certain systems, are unable to produce energy in a clean and efficient way, it starts to produce byproducts that are damaging not just to that cell, not just to that system, but also cascade into the wider system and create inflammation, oxidative stress, and long-term breakdown. And so metabolism, it is life. It is the production of energy. It has to be efficient. It has to be in the right proportion. And when that is possible, physical health, mental health are possible. When that starts to deteriorate, neither mental health nor physical health can long-term be possible because metabolic health is not there. So why is it important to know?
Great explanation, by the way.
That's the reason.
I think I love it because I give one explanation. I had Casey Means on here that gave her explanation that people loved. It became like a viral clip on Instagram. And then
She's
now,
great at it.
and obviously there's a lot of people talking about metabolic health, and to hear your explanation from your vantage point, it's another way to think about it. And I think the more ways people think about their metabolic health hearing it from different people, the more they understand the seriousness of it, because it is the foundation of health. It is energy is life. And when you cannot make energy efficiently or the system is thrown off, which is basically saying your metabolism is off, you cannot live life to the fullest. And it leads to every kind of chronic disease, whether it be cancer or heart disease or diabetes, Alzheimer's, or even thousands of other diseases out there, autoimmune diseases. All of them have a foundation in metabolic health, right? And so it is the one data point, in my opinion, that makes the most difference, right? And so that's why the continuous glucose monitor is so important, because it is a direct way to influence that foundational level of your health, which then influences everything else after it, right? So if you want to avoid disease, just get your blood glucose levels right. I think that's super critical.
Yeah. It's it can't be overstated how important it is. Again, like our cells are producing the energy that we use to be alive, right? It's the experience of life is the production and use of energy.
Right.
And so your brain cells require energy production locally. Your muscles, your heart, every aspect of the body is continuously generating and utilizing energy. And the reason blood glucose is so powerful is that the modern human runs primarily on sugar. And so that energy production is coming directly from glucose in most cases, the vast majority of it. And so it's right over the target. When you're measuring glucose, you're right over the target of energy production. And glucose has such a long lever, as you might say. Like it's got a lot of leverage on the sort of wider environment in the body. Glucose is a really powerful molecule because you can generate energy really efficiently with it. But also, because it is such an energy productive molecule, it can kind of go haywire. And so when it's elevated above a certain level, you start to cause collateral damage, right? It starts to stick to things. It starts to glycate. You can see glycation. Actually, glycation is the glucose sticking to and adhering to proteins. You can physically see this in the sort of the spottiness of skin. Like people's skin will get these like local spots that are, AGEs, advanced glycation end products, and that can happen internally as well. It's literally the kind of stiffening and almost the cooking, you might say, like the Maillard effect. When you brown proteins, you get that in a pan. You get that with glucose in the artery walls and throughout the body. And so there are serious consequences when glucose is elevated for too long. But the same sort of effect that we have with overproduction of glucose can also happen with fats, right? And other metabolites. So if you have too much circulating triglycerides, right? We aren't able to currently measure that continuously, but we also produce energy from fat continuously. And in fact, it's an even more energy efficient molecule in a lot of ways. You can get 9 calories of energy out of a gram of fat, and you only get 4 calories of energy out of a gram of carbohydrate. And so there's this really interesting paradigm there where like fat and glucose are both really important for energy production. Right now we can measure glucose, which is really powerful. But I think what's necessary to really paint the backside of the fence is to be able to also do the same thing with fats and to continuously be measuring triglycerides and the other circulating indicators of fat metabolism. Because if you have spillover, if you have a lot of excess production of glucose, well, that sticks to things and causes problems. We also see this with the fatty liver you were talking about. If you're locally in your liver producing a lot of extra fat, it will stick to the visceral organs, right? You'll get this this deposition of a layer of fat triglycerides right there locally, and that starts to have real systemic effects. The liver, one of my favorite people in the metabolic health space, Rob Lustig, he's really aggressive about this one point. He says, protect the liver, feed the gut. That's your job. Basically what he means by that is like, make sure your liver is functioning well and make sure that your microbiome is functioning well. And so like these are all metabolic concepts. We're talking about kind of an outcome here, like fatty liver. But what we mean is make sure that the right balance of inputs is present so that we're not creating a bunch of unnecessary byproducts of our metabolism that start to break down. And just to give the listeners kind of if there's one single thing I would say, if you don't want to do all the measurement, you don't want to get too deep in the weeds. Okay, I hope you'll reconsider. But to start off, my recommendation to improve metabolism, move a little bit more, and then replace the other stuff with protein and fiber. That's what it comes down to.
I love it.
Replace the other stuff with protein and fiber.
Right.
Basically, that's what it'll come down to. And you can get like really nice feedback on this and target it and figure out where to get those sources from. But if you move a little bit more, and I mean walking, like just literally walk more, try to get 10, 12,000 steps a day and try to get that protein up to 1 gram per pound of body fat and try to get that fiber over 35, 40 grams, you're going to be doing a lot better.
Fantastic. I love it. Yeah, and that's coming not just from your personal experience, but looking at the data of thousands of people that have worn a continuous glucose monitor and what has affected their blood glucose.
100%. I started doing it because I saw it in everyone else's data. And, we look at these population data sets that Levels has, we really have the largest data set of its kind on this continuous glucose and nutrition logs in the general population, right? Prior to that, it was only available in the diabetes state. And so we've been able to, through aggregated and obviously anonymized data, really start to understand trends. And this is what stands out is like those who eat higher fiber, higher protein diets and replace a lot of the other, heavy fats and heavy sugars with them and who move more, they are having much better results in terms of their metabolic health.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I just realized that you have a data set of people logging their food and following their continuous glucose monitor that really no one has ever had in the history of humans, right? And so you have tremendous amounts of data, with, to your point, with really good resolution what's working. And so to hear you summarize it that way, that's very powerful.
Yeah, and matched with blood work data as well.
That's right.
So, we can see and it's really interesting. It all kind of falls out of these basics. You obviously need to improve the inflammatory environment if you're exposed to toxins, mold, if you're not sleeping well. These are the sort of outside kind of conditions. But by and large, it's like major in the majors.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the composition of our plate still matters a lot. And we're taking in energy. We also need to be expending energy to stay in balance. And when we're walking, we're typically not going to be doing it indoors. I would highly recommend if you're going to walk out in the sunlight, not in the treadmill. Even if it's raining, just get outside. All these things compound, and Casey would certainly have a lot of additional insights to share to have like the full spectrum. But the basics are present in every person who's improving their metabolic health. They're getting those basics right.
That's fantastic. So you're running Levels Health right now, right? What else is going on in your life?
Oh, so much. I mean, Levels has been, we're entering like year 7 right now, and it's been just amazing. I'm enjoying every minute of it. We're expanding again the portfolio of services that we offer, really doubling down into this metabolic coaching and making sure that people have that next level of support that they need to be improving. So Levels is measurably improving your health, and that we want to make sure that you feel supported in that all the time. And so that's been a big adaptation. I'm going through it myself constantly. I'm doing all the programs myself, and so I get to like really be the guinea pig and experimentalist. Additionally, I'm living in Austin right now. My my first child showed up about 6.5 months ago.
Congrats.
And yeah, it's been an amazing life change. And so I'm just really, really enjoying just being in that sort of family mode when I'm not working and spending time with my baby and learning about all the things that he's teaching me already, about myself and about what all this is about. And really, I would say like the next thing is really just kind of taking on I really want to focus on a spiritual journey over the next few years. It's something that I really care a lot about, is that partially because my son arrived and it's getting me thinking about the big picture, but also because I think that, complete health is such a complicated thing, right? We talked about physical health and mental health and metabolic health, and all of these things I think are influenced again by hope and by like the big picture of fulfillment and purpose. And I think all these are all tied together. So I'm excited to explore some of the other elements, the metaphysical elements maybe of existence, and how that plays into physical health.
Oh, that's fantastic, man. Yeah, it's a big piece of it, I can tell you. And you can't ignore the spiritual side, the side that includes having great relationships, right? The side that includes spending some time taking care of yourself as well, giving your brain time to relax and chill with meditation, breath work. All of it has an outsized effect, and it has to all be tied together. But this was such an awesome conversation, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. And I'm really looking forward to working with you guys and doing so much more with you.
Well, I could not be more excited about the partnership, and thank you for having me on the show. Again, I really look up to what you all are doing here. You've got an incredible just infrastructure, and everything you do is so just dialed. And again, I said this at the beginning, the kind of bar that you're setting for what is ultimately healthcare is so important, because people want to opt into it. It's aspirational, it's hopeful, and I just hope that you influence more brands and more products and more conversations out there, because this is the direction we're moving in, and I'm really excited to do it together.
Thank you. Yeah, we're on a big journey to change the world, and we're on it together, so I'm excited.
I love it. Yeah.
Where can people find more about Levels Health and you?
So levels.com, and I highly recommend starting at the
blog. How much did that website cost you, by the way? I saw you just acquired it. I was like, that must have been...
It was actually, my co-founder, Sam, he's a real deal maker, and so we made it happen for relatively straightforward. But yeah, that was...
Levels.com.
Levels.com. And highly recommend starting at the blog or on our socials, which are at Levels on X, on Instagram, and TikTok. And then... myself, I'm basically, I typically post on X at Joshua's Forest is my handle, and I also send out a newsletter on our email chain. So if you sign up on the website, you'll get to hear from me, just the kind of the things I'm thinking about on a monthly basis, which is really fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed your last one about ApoB. It was a really quick, easy, good read. I sent it to a few people.
Very cool. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really, really enjoy it. But one of the best parts about this is getting to talk to the people who are using these tools and learning from them and finding better ways to do what we're doing. So always very open to jumping on calls and interacting with folks on email and on social. So please take the opportunity, reach out. I'd love to hear from you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.